US President Donald Trump just called his meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping as a G2 moment. 2 letters, 1 short phrase. But that phrase, G2, may have just redrawn the balance of power in Asia. Because if America and China are now the group of 2, what happens to the rest of the world, particularly countries like India, Japan, and Australia? At the summit in Busan, Trump emerged, beaming, all smiles, calling it a great meeting of both our countries. He announced a sweeping truce with China. Tariffs on Chinese goods would be cut by 10% down to 47%. Beijing would resume buying American soybean and sorghum. And perhaps most significantly, both sides agreed to reopen direct military-to-military communication channels, the kind of military channels that had gone cold since the Cold War. On paper, it looked like a victory for stability. But underneath all those smiles and the bonhomie was a much colder and much more dangerous reality. For the very first time in decades, a sitting US president has publicly acknowledged China as an equal, not a competitor, but a peer.
I thought it was a great meeting. I think it was a very friendly meeting. It was a good meeting for 2 very large, powerful countries. And that's the way we should get along with a large, powerful.
Why did you write?
The idea of a G2 is not a new one. It first surfaced in the late 2000s, which was basically the notion that the world's future could be managed by 2 giant countries. Washington and Beijing will decide what the global rules of engagement are. But here's the thing. Every American president, from Bill Clinton to Barack Obama and even Trump 1.0, avoided a G2. Because the G2 world means one thing, that everyone else becomes secondary. Bill Clinton pushed for engagement, but he underlined further alliances in Asia. George W. Bush deepened ties with both Japan and India, even as he fought wars in Afghanistan and in Iraq. Barack Obama launched the pivot to Asia, which was explicitly to prevent China from dominating the region. Even Trump, in his first term, despite all the chaos around it, was defined by tariffs and confrontation with China, not cooperation. And yet here we are in Trump 2.0, seeing the American president speak of China not as a rival, but as a partner in shaping global peace. This is not just a diplomatic thaw. This is a strategic shift, one that signals to the rest of the world that America no longer sees itself as the leader of the Indo-Pacific, but as one half of a new global duopoly.
He's a great leader of a very powerful, very strong country, China. And what can I say? We have, it was an outstanding group of decisions, I think, that was made. A lot of decisions were made, too. There wasn't too much left out there.
So why now? Why has Trump, in his second term, embraced the idea of a G2 so enthusiastically? Part of it is economic fatigue. The trade war with China has battered American farmers, American industry, and supply chains. Trump wants a win. He wants cheaper imports, he wants calmer markets, and he wants a revival of American exports to China. Part of it is also geopolitical calculation. He wants to end America's endless commitments around the world and instead cut a grand bargain with the one country that is powerful enough to challenge America. For Xi Jinping, the benefits are obvious. For years, Beijing has wanted Washington to treat it as an equal and not as a challenger. And now Trump has delivered exactly that. He's given Xi Jinping a photo op, he's given him the language he wanted, and most importantly, he has given China and its leader the legitimacy that they've sought. But what does this G2 really mean for the rest of Asia? Let's start with India. For the last 2 decades, India's grand strategy has been to partner with America and other democracies to balance China's rise. The US-India relationship, the Indo-Pacific strategy, the Quad, all of these were built on one simple assumption, that America would stay committed to containing Chinese dominance in Asia. But if Washington is now accepting Beijing as an equal, as a peer, and not as a competitor, then that entire foundation begins to crack. India's leverage weakens, its role as a regional balancer shrinks, and its hard-fought position at the global high table looks a little less secure. Then come Japan and Australia, again 2 countries that are part of the Quad. Both countries have tied their security future to the American presence in the Indo-Pacific. They have relied on the idea that America would be the ultimate security guarantor. It would back them militarily, politically, economically, and it will keep Chinese ambitions in check. But a US-China duopoly changes that entire worldview. If the world's two biggest powers now plan to manage the system together, then smaller allies become bystanders. They no longer help shape the rules. Washington and Beijing make the rules, and the rest of Asia just has to obey them. And then, of course, there is Taiwan. In Trump's grand statement about everlasting peace between China and America, there was no mention of Taiwan at all. No reaffirmation of America's defense commitments, no reference to strategic ambiguity. If the United States now sees China as a strategic equal, a partner that it wants to cooperate with rather than compete against, then would Washington still risk a confrontation with China to defend Taiwan? Trump was asked that question. So what happens next? We're already seeing the outlines of a new global order. Washington and Beijing have announced joint working groups on trade, on rare earths, on tech supply chains. They've agreed to open defense hotlines and even consider joint anti-piracy drills. Meanwhile, regional frameworks like the Indo-Pacific, like the Quad, which once symbolized unity against China's hegemony, are now starting to look sidelined. Japan and Australia are deepening their ties with India on their own, despite America. ASEAN countries are hedging their bets. Everyone is watching and wondering whether America, which has long promised a free and open Indo-Pacific, has just quietly traded that away to China. Because a true G2 or group of two between America and China does not mean world peace. It means power concentrated in two capitals, in Washington and in Beijing, while everyone else lives with the consequences of that.
Fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.